from the basement somewhere in Central Florida. In one of the last empty star room of the arcade arcades. Welcome to the Electric Circus. Use reviews, rants, raves, and other stuff. And your answer the Wizard of War. Find out the fight. Ta 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 ta. Here are your hosts, Raygunn and Nerd527.
Hi everyone, this is Raygunn from the Arcade Archives, welcoming each and every one of you to the Electric Circus. You're welcome everybody. Probably asking why we're calling it the Electric Circus. We'll get into that in a little while, but I'd like to introduce my cohort, my partner in crime, the man with the plan over here. He is my co-host, UberNerd527. Hello, UberNerd.
Hello, folks. How are y'all doing today?
I'm doing fine, sir. How are you this time?
I'm doing great, actually.
Wonderful. You excited about this?
I am super excited. I am a huge podcast fan. I love listening to podcasts, and I'm very excited to do this interview here today. So, let's get to it, man.
I say let's do this thing.
All right,
let's get started. Okay, gang, before we get started with this podcast, because it's our first one, I thought we would start with some interviews. And most of you know me from the Arcade Archives, the ones that listen. But I wanted to introduce and go over my friend here, UberNerd527, and see what his life's been like, and get a feel for him. So welcome, UberNerd, to the internet, the interweb, the podcasting. So tell us a little bit about yourself.
I am a game freak, where I've done more console games than actual arcade games. Although when I started growing up, arcade games were big and popular. Going to Chuck E. Cheese, or I remember when I was a kid, I used to have a friend of mine who had a lot of birthday parties at one of the biggest hotels here, and they had a huge arcade, and it was like, you walked in, your eyes went like 10 times bigger than your whole head, and
of course, been there, done that.
And you started just looking. You didn't know which game you wanted to start off with first,
Right.
I played classic games, Street Fighter, Donkey Kong, Galaga was another favorite. But I have to say that when I got a little older, that's when the console boom started.
Yeah.
So I'm a real big console freak. My video game kind of fan started off with the Commodore 64.
Yeah.
If you remember that.
Absolutely.
My dad actually had a Commodore 64 with the floppy disk.
Right.
And the thing, and attached it to a black and white TV. So it didn't have a color. Yeah. It was a little small black and white TV.
Monochrome. Let's put it that way. Just about.
And I can remember always wanting to play like Donkey Kong.
Right.
He had Donkey Kong. He had Zaxxon.
Oh,
Zaxxon.
One of my personal favorites. I love Zaxxon.
We also had a game called Avoid the Noise.
Yes.
Which is, we talked about Mappy earlier when we weren't recording.
Yeah.
And it's very similar to Mappy, if you know what I'm talking about. Mappy. You basically played a pizza delivery guy, and you tried to basically get away from the Noid. If you don't know, kids, if you don't know who the Noid is,
look him up on YouTube.
Look him up on Google or YouTube.
Yeah,
he was a mascot for Domino's Pizza, just so that you know, any kids that are listening.
A little fact for you guys too. He was also animated by the same people who did the California Raisins.
California Raisins.
And I cannot remember the animation company. I'll have to look it up later. But yes, they were done by the same company.
Wow.
They also did a video for Clearance Star Revival. I cannot think of the guy right now, but he did a video with a pig in it, and the pig was done. But anyway, we're way off topic because that's what I do. So yes, you were into consoles.
Yeah, so I started with the Commodore 64, played that for a long time. And then my dad got a Atari 2600 at a garage sale. 50 games.
See, that's awesome.
50 games,
Yep.
2 controllers, the console, for $10.
Oh my gosh, I can't even get that now for $10. Kids, go on eBay, look up the price. It's about $150 for all that.
And we had several games for it. We had all the Pac-Man games. Every single Pac-Man game. We had Pac-Man, we had Mrs. Pac-Man, we had Pac-Man Jr.
Yes. Pac-Man, I'll tell you, Junior Pac-Man was a programming feat on that, and we'll go into that some other time. It's one of my all-time favorite games, so that's really cool.
Let's see, what else did I have? We had Star Wars. We had a bunch of Star Wars games for it.
Well, you had the Star Wars arcade. That was like one of the last ones. You had Return of the Jedi, which was a very limited release.
Right.
And then you had Empire Strikes Back.
I had 2.
And then you had the original Star Wars Lightsaber Academy.
Yes, that's what I do. That's the 2 that I had.
Yeah, the paddle game.
I had Empire Strikes Back, which was the funniest game ever because I don't even think, all you did was just fight the AT-AT.
That's all, and it was kind of like a Defender.
It was a Defender.
It was kind of like that, but you had to wait. They were getting to your power core. You had to destroy each one of them, and it took so many shots. And there were so many in a row.
That game was so hard. And
your ship moved at like a billion miles an hour, and the slightest touch was like it was made of paper mache.
And you didn't even have the hook cables or anything.
Nothing.
You
just kept shooting.
You just kept shooting.
That was all you did. Hey, welcome to the Atari 2600. One fire button, buddy. That was it. That's all you had.
Let's see, what other games that I had a whole bunch of other games. But then I moved on to the NES. All the kids had NES, so you had to have an NES.
Yeah.
I remember playing DuckTales, one of my favorite games.
Yeah.
I have to say the game that I played the most, though, was Super Mario Bros. 3.
Yep.
That was the game that I would play almost every day.
Right.
And then, probably around 5th grade or so, that's when we started hearing about this Genesis thing. The Sega Genesis.
Yeah.
And then when the Sega Genesis came out, it was really cool. Altered Beast, that was like a game I played for it. If you go up on the site, I actually have the whole story about how I got my Genesis. Believe it or not, I was not actually a Nintendo fan at first. I was actually a Sega fan. I was a huge Sega fan. I loved Sega. And I was weird because most of the kids my age, Nintendo, Mario, Nintendo. I wanted Sega. I wanted Genesis. So if you get a chance, it's called Gift of Gaming. It's on the website. I'm not going to go through the story again, but I did get a Genesis eventually.
It's a good read. I've read it. It's wonderful.
I got the Genesis, and I was so excited. I started playing all the games for it. Sonic the Hedgehog. Sonic 2 was the game that I loved the most. In fact, not only this, my father was a Walt Disney Imagineer.
Yeah.
And he worked on Interventions when it was brought to you by Sega.
Yep.
And oh my goodness, when I went there for the first time, I couldn't breathe. It was like, oh my goodness.
And it's funny we didn't run into each other because what most people don't know is I worked next to Interventions at Journey to Imagination.
Oh, really?
From the audience. So I used to go over there before work when I wouldn't have my uniform on, and I had other things on, but not the uniform, and I would go in and actually play in the Sega booth and had such a great time.
Oh man, and the coolest thing, my father came home, and all the people who worked on the project got from Sega, directly from Sega, a Sonic 3 pin.
That's awesome.
I have 2 of them now. But he gave me one, and I just flipped out. I went nuts. I went crazy. Then one year, I got something new that just came out of the market. It was from Nintendo.
Oh boy.
And it was something that had never been done before. Well, it's been done, but had never really been done the way it was. It was called a portable gaming system.
Oh my gosh. Shut the front door. No way.
It was called Game Boy.
Oh my gosh.
And I will tell you, I got this Game Boy. My first game was Link to the Past. It was a combo pack thing with both stuff. I got it for my birthday, and it was one of the fat Game Boys with the green screen and everything. I literally played that thing to death. Literally, it died before I got it.
It's absolutely amazing, because I remember at that time, boy, the Game Boy, and I was not a fan because it was that monochrome, pea green, and the frame rate was weird because, of course, it was an LCD screen, so when it moved, it was real choppy.
Yeah.
So playing side-scrollers to me, I'm like, how do you do this when you can't really see what's going on? It's all blurry.
So I got that, and then I became a portable gaming fanatic. I love portable games. I had a spot on our couch that was directly under a lamp, so I could sit there and I could play it.
And I had backlit LEDs.
So my parents, I think, were worried that my eyesight would go bad, so they started giving me, you know, those magnifying, giving me some magnifiers.
Boy, those guys made a bunch of money, did they, huh?
Yeah, but those lights didn't last long.
Never. I remember, subsequently, years later, my daughters, their first gaming console of their own was the Game Boy Advance, and that was just before they started doing the backlit screens, and they were still, like, hawking these crazy magnifying screens and lamps, and they weren't any better 10 years later either. And you'd go through batteries like oxygen. I mean, it was just the craziest thing ever.
Well, speaking of things that suck batteries dry, the next system I got was the Game Gear.
Yes, that was another one.
6 AA batteries.
Yes, sir.
That thing drained the batteries. But it was in color, which was different from the other one. Yeah. And the coolest thing, I thought, I never did buy this. I wanted it, but I never did buy it. Was an adapter that turned it into TV.
Yes, I remember.
The Game Girl had that, and I really wanted that, but I never did get it because I was all, wow, I could watch TV wherever I wanted.
You know, it's funny because at the time I remember the TurboGrafx handheld, and that thing was like $500, and I'm like, and I can watch television? I was this close to shelling out some money that I didn't have for a television that played games, and I could carry it around, and it weighed maybe 5 pounds. That's great.
So I think after that, I got my Super Nintendo. I actually got a Super Nintendo late in the game.
Yep.
Way after.
And that's understandable because, you know, you're talking about a time when, you know, you were either on the Sega camp or the Nintendo camp. There was no in between for most people. And
well, there still is no in between.
But you know what's funny is that was the beginning of that. Really, I mean, you know, before that you had the Intellivision and Atari and ColecoVision thing, but it was a very different time because those were the first consoles.
Right.
So you bought into it. You bought into it for life. You didn't think there would be anything else.
Right.
You know, by the time the Genesis came out, you knew that there would be something over the horizon. And, you know, so that's understandable that you would stick with one and not the other.
Right. And I did get one because a friend of mine actually had Super Nintendo, and we often played the Super Star Wars trilogy.
Yes.
Which is one of the best games for the Super Nintendo, in my opinion. I was a side-scrolling freak.
Yeah.
Like, I didn't even really like other games. Like, I played the original Zelda game.
Yeah.
I did not like it because I couldn't.
Oh, no way.
I did not like it because I was like, I can't jump. I can't jump. To this day, it still bugs me that I can't jump in Zelda games. But we'll get to that.
Let's work on a ROM hack. Anybody out there want to work on that ROM hack? Let's get on.
I did not like the original Zelda game. I tried to like Zelda 2.
Yeah.
Did not like Zelda 2.
I hated Zelda 2. Didn't like the direction.
I liked that it was side-scrolling, because I was like, oh, well, this is
you know, and it was one of those games, if you remember, it was very misleading, because you saw the pictures and your jaw hit the floor until you actually played it, and you said, this is the most boring, this is like watching paint dry the game.
Well, I will tell you, though, just going off the rails a little bit, there is an Adventure Time game for the 3DS.
Right.
That plays very similar to Zelda 2. But it does it in a really good way, and I really enjoyed that game, even though it's super short.
Probably have to check that out.
3-4 hours.
But you know, that's the difference between games today and games of yesteryear. You know, most of these games today are apps.
Right.
So you think of an app, you think of a small, bite-sized little, world, as opposed to something much larger like a Zelda, where you knew it would take you sometimes weeks to complete the game.
Right.
So there's a big difference.
And then after that, I don't think I got any other game systems. Going back to our game systems, I don't think I got any other game systems until the N64. I got that game. I got the system. I was very excited about that. I really wanted to play GoldenEye. And it was the first time you could ever play 4 people on the same screen. We were so excited.
That was a big title for Nintendo at the time because they were so anti-violence.
Right.
Up until the N64 era where things really started to change. I think GoldenEye had a lot to do with that.
Right. And, I mean, you know, playing 4 players at a time, being one of 2 other brothers, it was great because now I could actually play with all of us together, and that's when we started having parties. I think that's when I started getting into FPSs, first-person shooters. But I have since got out of that phase.
Yeah. Well, really, GoldenEye started that.
Right. Well, GoldenEye started the whole thing because it was such a great game.
Yeah.
It was such a well-done game, and now I look at it now, and I'm like, wow. The graphics.
Well, here's something we could do later on, too. We should do a comparison because I know that there was like an updated version that was done for the Wii.
Yes.
And I wasn't sure. Now, I haven't played either one, I'll be quite honest. Big James Bond fan, but just wasn't into the first-person shooter thing.
Right.
But I've heard that it was very well done, and I don't know how it was received, but I would assume very well.
Right. Let's see. And then after that was the GameCube.
Yeah. One of my favorite systems.
Definitely Smash Brothers. I'll love myself from Smash Brothers.
Yeah.
Totally love Smash Brothers.
I like Smash Brothers also. It was that was such an amazing thing too, because again, another evolution for Nintendo.
Right.
Here's their iconic characters beating the snot out of each other. I mean, that was unheard of 10 years before. You wouldn't have thought that could have happened.
And when I got the N64 and played the original game, that was really interesting because I'm like, here's these characters for the first time all together in the same game.
Yeah.
And it was really neat to be able to play them. And then moving over to Melee on the GameCube,
right.
It was almost surreal because these characters looked a little more realistic than they had looked in previous games.
Yeah. Well, it's funny. I remember the N64. The thing that always grabbed me is I remember seeing it on display. I think it's Sears or something at the time it came out, and they would show the Mario game that was out on it. Was it Super Mario 64, I believe? And you would just see Mario's face. Now, coming from my generation, Mario was an 8-bit character, and you only saw the side of him all the time. Right. And here was his face right at you. And that was the first time,
and pull his nose.
Right.
And,
it was amazing that you could actually see that character for the first time. So again, that's another thing about evolution, especially with a company like Nintendo, where I think a lot of companies here remain stagnant would create a character, and it pretty much stayed the same. But Nintendo always tried to evolve and change the face of gaming in that respect.
And that's when Sega stopped making game systems.
Yep.
I went to the Nintendo camp because Nintendo did a great job, and then I got a job at GameStop.
Yeah.
And I worked at the time it was called the GameStop.
Right.
But now it's GameStop. Anyway, so I worked there, and then I started branching out to other game systems, because for a long time Nintendo was all I had.
Yep.
So I started playing other game systems. That's when I got my Xbox and played Halo for the first time.
Yep.
And that was the only reason I got an Xbox, really, was to play Halo. Because I remember we had another friend of ours come over, and he would bring his Xbox, and we would play Halo.
Yep.
And it reminded me so much of GoldenEye.
Yeah.
That I had to play it. And then, now I've got the newer systems. I had an Xbox 360, although I kind of got out of playing first-person shooters because I just feel that most, and I'm sorry if you like first-person shooters, if you do, that's great, but I just get tired of them because it just seems like the same thing over and over again, just redone,
Yeah.
I will have to say, though, if there is one first-person shooter I do like playing, and that's BioShock.
Yeah.
Because BioShock, the story is so well done.
Yeah.
You want to play it. You want to play through it.
It's almost like being in a movie.
Right.
I've never played it, and I watched it.
So now I've got PlayStation 3, Wii U, my 3DS. I love the Wii U. I really think it is an underrated system. I really, truly do.
Here's my take on it. Nintendo, when they do new systems, everybody kind of steps back and takes a good hard look at it, and they're either in the camp when it first comes out that they love it and have to have it, i.e. the Wii.
Right.
When it came out, that was one. Wii U, on the other hand, I think what's hurting it so far is the fact that it is youth. It's gone away from the family to the personal gaming again. And there are unfortunately so many personal gaming systems, I mean the two big ones next to them, that Nintendo has to step it up now that they've decided that they're going in that direction to get these second party titles out and I think this is going to be their year. I really do. There's a lot of great titles coming out this year.
You already heard, first of all, that we actually pretty much outsold PS4 and Xbox One for Christmas.
It did.
And not only that, but the 3DS outsold everything.
3DS, there's a GIF online, and if you've never seen it, it's Shigeru Miyamoto and I think the president of Nintendo standing next to each other holding, I think was an original DS, and they're laughing, and all it says is, "It prints money." And that sums it all up, because when they developed the Game Boy,
there's a Game Boy printer in there somewhere.
Yes, there is, absolutely. And they're going to have the camera attached to it so they can put their photo on the piece of money. No, what I think what Nintendo did 20 plus years ago at this point is they developed not only a system but a new era of gaming that was already kind of there with the handhelds that Coleco and a few of the other companies had put out in the 80s, but they took it and kept evolving. Again, going back to Nintendo, they've always been the ones to evolve the technology, and then everybody else seems to follow along. For example, the Wii Remote. The Wii Remote was really the first that I know of controller that worked the way it did, and then subsequently thereafter, then you had Sony that released theirs, which looked god-awful. We won't even go into what they looked like. But anyway, everybody kind of followed suit after Nintendo would do something. And I really think it speaks volumes for their company. It's the way they work. Okay, well, now that we know where you came from,
gaming-wise,
your gaming history.
Not totally yet.
Exactly. But where you came from with your gaming knowledge. Let's talk about what you're doing now. You work at
Disney Quest.
That's right. For those of you that don't know, Disney Quest is a 5-story theme park that is located. We call it not an arcade. In fact, that's one word.
We have arcades in the building, but we're not specifically on it.
Right. And it is a very a wonderful place that someday we'll do a podcast about and maybe from. I think
that would be awesome.
I think we could swing that one. But we both worked there. That's how we met. And basically, it is a 5-story theme park. We have 8 attractions based on Magic Kingdom rides. Yes, this is what we tell everybody out at the front greeter position. And we have over 270 video games. We have everything. Oh, well, let's round it up. 300 video games. Everything from Pac-Man all the way up. And it's an amazing place. But that's where we got together and we started discussing the arcade archives.
Right.
And I had been hinting to a lot of our viewers on the site that there were a lot of changes coming along. And this is one of the big ones. Not only Uber Nerd, but about 4 or 5 of the people, hopefully, will be posting on our site on a semi-regular basis. That's what we're hoping for, different collaborators. And the most amazing part is that 90% of us work at Disney Quest.
But we're all nerds there.
We're all nerds.
And the cool thing about, because I've always wanted to do a blog, just talking about different things. I have a blog, an art blog, because I'm also an artist.
Yeah.
I put art up there. But this blog is a chance to get my, video games, because I have huge love for video games.
If you don't, there's something wrong with you.
But I really love video games, and this has been a chance for me to, get that love out there, that I'm so blessed to be able to have this, to be able to offer all these articles on your site. It all started with my first one, which was Boombox. Video game Boombox.
Video game Boombox.
It was my first one, and what was it about?
I think it was about Zelda, the first one, wasn't it?
Well, no, that was the icon was Zelda.
That's right.
He was holding up a boombox.
That's right.
Oh, I remember. It's for the gamers.
Yeah.
For the gamers.
Okay.
Which is what I call the video gamers national anthem.
Right.
So I did that article first, and then I did some other boomboxes besides that. Then we had Pokemon Month, which absolutely just flew up the site.
Which, by the way, was supposed to be Pokemon Week, but A, it was so popular, and B, Raygunn was working full-time and did not have the chance to tear anything down and start over, so it became Pokemon Month, which I think was October.
I think the only thing that we missed with that month is we didn't actually have a review for Pokemon X and Y, and I think we should have.
We will do it. The thing with the archives is it's never too late. That's one thing I've always kind of put out there is that, things happen in their own time. We are not the type of site yet that, of course, is, paying us money, which would be great. And, so we have to do things in our own sweet time not only as time allows, but as we feel it. And that's the artistic side of it as well, is, you have to really feel the article.
Right.
And then you become part of it, and then bang, it's on the site, and you feel good about it. If you rush it, it's really pointless. Right. So we'll do that in a future either podcast episode or maybe we'll do a written review.
Well, I think that's the good thing about this podcast is now we actually get the chance to give you a voice, because even though articles are really nice and I love writing them, I never thought I'd love writing these articles.
Amazing thing, isn't it?
It is. But now we actually give a voice to this, and you actually get to hear us and our opinions on it. And I'm hoping, Ray and I get to bring up our articles on here and maybe talk about them and
absolutely,
kind of give them some thought. I think one of the articles we may do for our next podcast, maybe we'll see, is the top 5 underrated video games.
Absolutely, and I like that one a lot. That's one of my favorites in the last month or so that you've done. By the way, I haven't put on a post, I think, since October. Again, working a lot of hours, and I haven't had a lot of time. So Ubernerd has really taken on the reins of the Arcade Archives at the moment, and I really appreciate it. But that's the thing I like about this, because another article that I particularly love, and we'll talk about this when we go through my history, is the Starcade Memories.
Yeah.
I actually want to start reviewing those. For those who don't know, it's a fascinating little show. It's on YouTube. You can watch it. It was basically the first video gaming game show.
Much better than Nick Arcade.
Extremely much better, because these guys gave out the real Megillah. They gave out a real arcade game at the end of the... If you actually won, you got a real arcade game to home with you.
See, that's still not better than Double Dare, because if you won Double Dare, you got an NES.
Yeah, well, we'll argue about that one later.
But having an arcade,
that's
like everyone's dream.
Giggity, are you kidding?
That's everyone's dream.
But that's one I would love to do.
Right. And oh man, so excited to be here and to be podcasting.
I think this is going to be so awesome.
It's going to be awesome.
I know there's a lot of podcasts out there, and particularly video game podcasts.
Right.
What is going to set us apart from you two?
I don't know really. I think that a lot of video game podcasts tend to, I think because especially if it's just me and you for most of it, you're more old school, I'm more new school. I think it's going to be a good dynamic.
I think that you just hit the nail right on the head. I think that has a lot to do with it, because what most people won't know until, especially when they see the video cast, they realize there's about 25 years between us in age, so it literally will be old versus new in most cases. And I see a lot of dynamic with maybe remakes and things like that, where maybe I take the old version.
Like DuckTales Remastered.
Exactly.
A great example of an old school game done right.
Right, exactly.
Exactly. We'll talk about that a little bit later on. Let's move on to your interview.
Okay. All right.
So, tell us your video game history, if you will.
Okay, way back at the dawn of time.
They had that shirts on the arcade?
Yeah, exactly. No. Okay, well, let's see. I'll start with where I grew up. I grew up just outside of New York City, in a town called Poughkeepsie, New York, which literally is about 40 miles outside the city. And I grew up in the late 70s and early 80s, basically the golden age of video gaming.
You had this
Oh, my bell bottom. Are you kidding? Are you kidding? Man, I had the big feathered hair and everything. Now that's before mullets. Okay, let's talk about.
Oh boy.
Now, if anybody's seen my YouTube video of my first manager position in 1990, actually,
So you had
sporting half a mullet
party at the back?
Yeah, that was at the end. That was the late 80s. That was terrible. I regret that. Yeah, I grew up at a time when, we were coming out of the dawn of the home game market with, Pong phones and the black and white video games that we played at home. And also you had the advent of course, the black and white video games going up to Space Invaders and then into the color games like Galactian, which basically is the first color game, then into the era of Pac-Man, things like that. My first system was the I guess
home system.
Home system. We're gonna go home system
okay.
first.
All right.
My first home system was a Coleco. It was a Hellstar arcade. It played multiple games. It had this was really cool. It had a shotgun for clay pigeon shooting. It had a little driving wheel.
So it's like Duck Hunt?
It was like think of it 3 or 4 games that wrapped around this triangular console, and you had cartridges that would sit on the top of it. And my dad was so proud of that thing. He brought it home. He did his research. My dad was an electrical engineer with a company out of Connecticut that no longer exists, but he was a very intelligent man. So everything he did with electronics, he would do like so much research before he bought anything. And like he literally researched home gaming for a year before he bought the system. And like I had 6 siblings. My stepdad had 4 children. My mother had 3. And they're all in the same house, so it was a very frustrating thing to wait a whole year for a gaming system that just came out. And so we finally got this thing, and it was amazing for its time. We, again, it was very simplistic. You shot a dot on the screen. You had the steering wheel. You would steer a little like car stick-figure thing around a racetrack and things like that. That was my first system. I think that was about 1979. My first handheld system, you ready for this?
Oh no.
Was Atari Touch Me. Atari Touch Me was a...
I don't think I've ever heard of it.
Yes, it was about 1977. It was a handheld version of Simon before Simon came out.
Oh, okay.
And played like 5 or 6 different Simon-style games. Again, it was called Touch Me, which was kind of inappropriate, I think, at the time. But it was really fascinating. It looked like a little handheld calculator. It was yellow, and it had the 4 different colored buttons that you would push in order. And it was a really neat little system. And then my mom got me my first Atari 2600. That was 1981.
Wow.
When I got it. And we knew a guy that worked with Crazy Eddie, which most of down here don't know, but if you come up north, I remember Crazy Eddie from the commercials. We had a neighbor that worked with him who was an area manager, so he would tell my mom like what games were coming out, and she would set aside some money every week or so, and he would bring home like the latest Activision cartridges and the Magic cartridges and everything else, and so I was fully stocked. And then my next gaming system was and this isn't really a gaming system, it was the Atari 400 computer.
Oh wow.
And it was the first computer I ever saw.
Well, this was like Atari's attempt to get into home computer market?
Well, they were in the home computer market before Commodore. Oh. They were in it before Commodore. Their first computer system came out in 1980. And they had the Atari 400 and the Atari 800. The difference between the two is the 400 had a single cartridge slot, a membrane keyboard. So it wasn't really a typing keyboard. It was a sheet of thin plastic going across and had all the alphabet and you type with it. And it only had 16K of ROM, and it was not upgradable. So you could not. You could only. What the sad part was, most of it was for gaming. Let's face it. Computers back then were used for games. People would program the ones that were really good. Most people just gamed on them. And the problem was that if you had the Atari 400, you could only play up to a program that was up to 16K. So anything past that, you literally couldn't play it. So a friend of mine at school had an Atari 800, which had a whopping 48K of memory, and had detachable cartridges inside that could remove the memory, add memory. So I got that, and then he'd give me a whole disc of games back then, you could get them on disc, so I had a huge pile of games. We'll go over
that. About floppy disk.
Floppy disk.
Yes. The actual floppy disk.
The actual floppy.
Not hard disk.
Not hard disk.
Which
These
is
are
different.
Floppy. You would stick it in your floppy disk drive, and then when you got done playing it, you would remove it and put another one in.
Yeah, because we got confused when I was a kid. Because we didn't know what a hard disk was and a floppy. I remember floppy disk.
Yeah.
And I remember hard disk.
Yeah. And you have to be careful with the floppy disk. They were called floppy for a reason. They were soft.
Oh, yeah.
So you have to be very careful and never put them near anything magnetic.
Oh, yeah.
Because they had a sheath over them, but what was inside was, could be erased purely by putting it too close to a TV screen.
Is that still a problem with computers nowadays?
I think, with your hard drives and things like that, they probably have a casing around them that does protect them to a certain point. They certainly aren't as fragile as a floppy disk, that's for sure.
Sure.
I mean, you could probably drop a hard disk on the floor and not really damage it per se, but back in the day, those were pretty delicate. In fact, I remember I had this plastic case. I would keep them all in, and it was an index, so I could go through, and they were all in alphabetical order. But those were the home use I had, and of course, I always wanted the ColecoVision, and it was like the unobtainable console. That every year I wanted the ColecoVision and was denied the ColecoVision. And I'm going to do a huge thing on ColecoVision because again, it was like that all-time favorite. And I remember getting my first one about 20 years ago. I bought from a guy, and it had 30 games, and it had all the attachments you could get with it. And it was like Christmas. I was like, this is the most amazing system ever. And for those who don't know, ColecoVision was kind of a late entry in the what call the second era of home gaming, and their basic formula was we're going to take every semi-obscure arcade game and make it a home version. And they were almost spot on. These games are phenomenal. They were the first ones to have Donkey Kong. Right. And their version of Donkey Kong was actually really good. And the controllers were a little wonky. They had a little knob on top and everything. But the system itself was fantastic. Long story short, I never got one. And I always wanted one. But really,
did you ever get one?
I did. 20 years later. After the fact, yeah, I got one. I still have one today. I actually have two today. In fact, I picked up a set of super action controllers that don't work that I have to now get working. But they're pretty cool. I'll have to show you those one day.
I mean, because I remember wanting a Nomad.
Oh yeah, I remember.
Oh my goodness.
They had that at Inventions.
I bought it.
Yeah,
I bought one. That thing. Oh man, 6 AA batteries.
Yes.
It only lasted probably about an hour and a half.
And it played Genesis games.
Genesis games.
Yeah.
And the funny thing was, I thought it was funny. It had a little port on the bottom of it.
Right.
And you could plug in a regular Genesis controller.
Yes, I remember that. So basically, didn't it have AV out too? You could
plug
it into
you could plug it into
literally,
it
was a Genesis.
Yep.
If for all intents and purposes, you could actually use it as a Genesis.
And now they have that smaller Genesis now you can buy with the wireless controller.
The technology they have today is ridiculous. For $30, you buy that Sega Genesis, has 60 games and a console port, folks.
So you can play arcade. You can play your original cartridges.
Yeah, and they all work. And according to a few of the reviews I've heard online, it's actually a pretty good system. But anyway, that was my home thing. But see, the other side of it was my arcade stuff, i.e., the arcade archive. I got my first job in 1981. It was at the Dream Machine Arcade in Poughkeepsie at the South Hills Mall. And it was a pretty amazing thing. For most kids today, they don't know what an arcade is unless they go to a place like Disney Quest and they walk in for the first time. Their eyes get big as saucers, and they're like, what is this place? This is amazing. What happened? This is like the coolest thing ever. But an arcade basically was a place where you went to play full-size arcade games. Now, arcade games really started the industry, so to speak. That was really where home gaming came into play. Was Nolan Bushnell of Atari developed Pong, and Pong went out, and then arcades were already out there because of course you had pinball and games of skill and other things like redemption machines, and then all of a sudden video games showed up, and that's where home units came from. was that kind of evolution from the arcade.
People just wanted to go home and not have
right.
to
They
spend
wanted
a quarter.
yes. They, well, it was that hey, we're already making money off the arcade version of Pong. Let's make a home version.
Right.
For taco. And really, it was it was a lateral move. There wasn't any technology there. So of course you got the arcade version at home.
Right.
Because it did nothing but a little dot moving across the screen with two paddles on either side. So. But, the arcade was an amazing place. Typical arcades would have anywhere from, say, 75 games up to maybe 200, depending on the size of the place. And it was a really neat place. You'd walk in, it would be carpeted, and, back in the late 70s, shag carpet was all the rage. And, of course, So what happened is, your arcades were typically in a shopping mall, and shopping malls were relatively new thing as well. So you would go in, and a lot of the vendors that were in the mall would complain about the noise. So these guys would actually put the carpet on the wall, and that would bounce off and muffle the noise.
That's where that came from.
Whenever you went
You'll
into
not
an
believe
arcade,
this, but my school that I went to, the built-in business.
Yeah.
And they had carpet on the wall.
That's exactly what it was for.
Nasty.
It was close the noise.
It had, oh my goodness.
Yeah, that's exactly what that came
that's
from.
Where that came
they
from.
found that would muffle the noise in the mall. But you would walk in, and usually you had a change booth, or you had a change attendant walking around, and you had changers that you could put money into and get tokens or quarters or whatever they would use. And then you'd go to your individual games and start playing. Well, the whole idea was that you were playing in front of your compatriots, whether they were friend or foe. You would play, and they would determine if you were good or not, or you would determine if they were good or not, and then you might compete against each other in the game. Kind of evolved into what the online gaming scene is today, but a very different thing because you were in front of the people. They literally were watching you play that game.
Right.
So it made it sometimes very nerve-wracking and sometimes very frustrating thing, or sometimes it was like the most amazing feeling in the world because you were kicking that guy's butt and he knew it, and so that was a really neat thing. But it was just it was a different time. It was a really cool place to hang out, and I spent most of my youth in an arcade, literally. I remember, saving up change and taking the bus from my small village where I lived, Hopewell Junction, out to either the Duchess Mall, which was in Fishkill, which was kind of a lateral move from my house, or up to Fishkill, the South Hills Mall was. Those were the two main malls in our area, and both of them had Dream Machine arcades. Well, my first job was at the Dream Machine in South Hills Mall, and it went from where I was the change attendant, and then I became a technician. About a year or two later, my fascination was, I love playing the game. I wanted to see what was inside of it, and open it up and actually learn how to fix them. And, I had a manager who really wanted to show me the ropes. And my dad, who was an electrician, had the wiring outlet at the age of 9. So I had a general knowledge of electricity. After that, I started working on games. And, in high school, I took a class called electromechanical assembly.
Wow.
Basically, just a big word for
Did you have an acronym for that?
No. Well, you could. You could say, I guess, EMA. But basically, it was assembly of circuit boards, and that's where it all started for me. I literally just wanted to know how they worked, and I started working on them, and that continued. Moving forward, I would I started collecting games. My first game I ever bought, my first arcade game I ever bought, actually, my very first podcast was about it, and anybody who listened to it, I know the few people that did, it was Space Ace.
Oh,
I bought a Space Ace machine. It was April 5th, 1985, and it was the actual machine I learned on. It was at the Duchess Mall in Fishkill. The Duchess Mall Dream Machine had Space Ace, and I loved Dragon Player. I loved Space Ace even more. It was just the way it branched and the story of itself. I liked a lot. So when I had the opportunity to buy it, that was my first loan. Most guys my age were buying cars for their first loan. I bought an arcade machine.
You know what? I actually, when I was a kid, I actually pushed back driving a little bit. I didn't think I could drive. My abysmal driving abilities in video games
Yep.
didn't actually help that.
Well, you know, hey, I'll tell you something. I learned most of what I knew from driving by playing pole position. That'll sum it all up right there. We had a sit-down pole position, and it was 1982.
And the funny thing is now they use actual game, well, almost video games basically to teach people how to drive.
I was in driver's ed, and you know, I was like going to the arcade playing pole position, and then I would go to driver's ed, and the teacher would complain why I was like turning so fast and everything, and I told him what I was doing. I was playing pole position. And he's like, you cannot play pole position and drive, Trevor. You know, and this is back in the day when driver's ed was like the entire summer, and you went and you learned how to drive, and the teacher annoyed you. But anyway, yeah, so, you know, my experience primarily came from the arcades. A lot of home stuff, but mostly from the arcades. And, you know, many years of working at different companies. I worked for Nickels and Dimes. They were an arcade franchise. They had places like Goldmine and Tilt and a few other places. I worked for Chuck E. Cheese. I worked for Namco. I worked for a lot of them. And then by the early 2000s, you know, people wanted them in their house, so I got into restoration and worked for several local restoration companies here in Orlando, and then started my own, which technically I still operate it from time to time. It's called Bright Idea Amusement. Would buy up machines, restore them, and turn around and sell them or rent them or whatever we need to do them. And I opened a place locally with, well, I didn't open it with him. It was his money. I helped open it, I should say. A place called Birthday World. Subsequently closed down.
But it's not there anymore?
No. But you got to remember, the arcade industry as a whole has completely changed.
Right.
I mean, there used to be an arcade in every mall. Now there isn't.
Right.
And that's not demographically. It's not like, you know, every state is different. I've heard in other states that our arcades. Florida, for some reason, just fell off the face of the earth as far as arcades are concerned. But that's why our collecting, the people collect. Yeah. Well, no. What happened was the people that went to the arcades got so mad they started buying the damn stuff. So we have so many collectors in our area, and I happen to be one of them, and I'm very proud of that. And arcade history is what really started the arcade archives. Originally, the arcade archive was merely going to be kind of a, I don't know what you'd call it, a scrapbook blog of my life in arcades, and that's really where it went. I just wanted to kind of leave my legacy, you know, years down the road. People might look at it and say, hey, yeah, that guy was, you know, in a pretty cool era that no longer exists, and it is true. I mean, the time of the arcade is pretty much gone, but that's why I love working at Disney Quest, because you will see these kids who have never seen an arcade cabinet in their life walk up and go, "You only played one game?" You know? And they're like, this is it? But it's fascinating because once they get on it, it just changes their life forever, because you're like, there is nothing, and I will tell you this, to you kids that have never been in front of an arcade machine, there is nothing like walking up to a real arcade machine, putting in a quarter, hitting the start button and playing. Standing in front of it, that picture tube staring you in the face and staring at it, it's very different than playing a home machine. But playing a home machine is fun. Don't get me wrong. Sure. But it's very it's always the same. Whereas when you go in an arcade, and I've always said this, one of my favorite lines is, a quarter can take you to a different world, and that's what the arcade was about. You would walk in, and each cabinet was a different world. And you know, it's funny because I think that's what Wreck-It Ralph did. Right. It showed everybody that each cabinet was literally a different world. Yeah. And that's how it felt. You would walk in, and there was, you know, literally, 150 games or whatever, and each one was just completely different. And so now I have my own little arcade. I have about 5 machines.
Rarest one you have?
The rarest one is called Swimmer. Swimmer came out in 1982.
This is an old arcade machine.
Yes, this is an upright arcade machine. I may have shown snapshots of it on my website from time to time. You might see it. But it came out in 1982. Con was the company that programmed it. The company that released it here in the States, because that was a big deal back then. The Japanese companies wouldn't spend the money to build the cabinets and ship them over here. It was too expensive. So what they would do is they would have a licensing company in the United States to release that game. So they would give them the software, or sometimes they would give them the whole, CPU, and then they would build the cabinets. And
slightly similar to how games are now, because you have developers, you have publishers, and stuff like that.
It made sense, and the company that built the cabinets and released the game here in the States called Centauri, which was actually out of Florida. It was down near Coral Gables, I think, somewhere, Boca Raton area. And they released a lot of arcade cabinets in the day. They did Phoenix and Pallades and a slew of other ones. Swimmer was one of them. It had the lowest production run of any other game. And I saw it in the arcade that I worked in, Green Machine, in 1982. I just liked the game. I was always into those obscure, weird games like Mappy and things like that. They're just, they're kind of off-center. They're colorful. They're bright. Cartoony.
Huh? I like Tengo.
Tengo is great. I have that's on my multi-cabinet.
I actually had that on my 2020.
And that was actually a very authentic arcade version of Tengo, even though the graphics couldn't keep up. And that's another podcast we're going to do, is about how Atari worked around the limited technology they had to come out with some of the really solid titles they did, and why people put down Pac-Man when they shouldn't, and things like that. We're going to go into that another time. But Swimmer was just, to me, a very unique game, and I remember about 10 years ago I had a chance to go to an auction locally, and they had a Swimmer there, and I'm like, oh yeah, this is mine. Nobody else is getting this but me, because I figured nobody else would know it, and of course I had a big war with the guy. Long story short, the game came from one owner. The guy bought it off the showroom floor in 1982, where he might have been at the local distributor here, or I think he might have gone down to Centauri itself and bought it. And subsequently, when he passed away, the kids didn't want to keep it.
Right.
So then they took it to the game auction, and that's how I ended up with it. So it literally had, I think, 300 plays on the cabinet for its entire life, which, if anybody knows, that's nothing. I mean, that's like an odometer on a car saying 300 miles, and it's like a 95 Geo Metro or something. And like you're questioning why. But that's basically, my rarest game. It's a lot of fun. I'm going to do like a mini review on it. I have one series that I do on the archives website that I'm going to start up again, but there's a different name for each one. Like I did one for Platform Peril, there's going to be Maze Madness, and a few other ones, and I have to find where Swimmer fits into those, and we'll do a review of Swimmer. It's a lot of fun. That's the rarest one I have. I also have a Centipede Cabaret, which is a mini cabinet that they would use in bars and things like that. The board was no good in it, so I decided to try my hand at the multi-board cabinet, so I built a multi-game in it. And it has the 60-way, and a lot of people complain about the 60-way board, but I'll tell you, the audio is off on maybe 5 minutes total. The rest of it is, to me, arcade perfect. It plays, looks and sounds just like I remember. I also have a dedicated Mario Brothers, and I'm a huge Mario Brothers fan, and out of the series, that was my favorite, so of course I had to have one of those.
The first time I ever played that game was on Super Mario Brothers 3.
Really?
I never played that arcade.
Oh my god.
I never played the arcade, but I played, if you remember, Super Mario Brothers 3.
Yeah, they had a little, like, duel to the death thing going on in that. Yeah. Yeah. It's think of that only expanded. The game itself is a lot of fun to play, and it's funny because when we're working, and there's kids out there, and they'll have Mario shirts on, and that's where I put my Mario cap on, and I say, "Hey kids, guess what we have here? What's that? Mario Brothers. Which one? The original." Oh,
the first
what's
one.
That? And they go up and play it, and they actually come up to me later and say, this is really, but they're fascinated after they play it once. They're like, I love this. This is so cool, because you literally, it's just you, your wits, and what's coming out at you, and how do you defeat it. And I find the game much more challenging than most of them because of that fact, and you're in a very cramped area, and you really have to figure out, especially in later levels, how to move around.
Well, that's also why I think that Super Mario 3D Land, Super Mario 3D World on Wii U I think that's why they added the Super Luigi Brothers.
Yes.
Not only because of, just because it's the year of Luigi.
That's right. Which I missed already.
Which last year was the year.
I'm really sad that it's over. I was really...
We don't know whose year it is this year.
It was a party every week at my house for the year of Luigi. I wore my Luigi cap around the house every single...
Well, as long as you didn't wear your Luigi mustache.
No, I wish I could grow one of those, but I can't.
But I think that's why they added it into that game, is because it's such a great game. And even now, I still play it every once in a while. And I'm like, oh, this is kind of cool. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, I have a few cabinets, and I enjoy that's where really, like I said, the Arcade Archives comes from. And when we get to our new studio, hopefully,
because we're in a multi-million-dollar studio right now.
Absolutely,
totally,
and it's called Uber Nerd's Apartment. Is what it's called. But I will be going into a bigger house, me and my wife. Uber Nerd's more than welcome to visit us, but he doesn't really live with us. It's his own place.
As long as your rent's trying to cheapen, I still get free.
We'll see. We'll see. I gotta wait for one of the kids to move out before that happens. But so when we get to our newer facility, we'll actually have the games in a climate-controlled room where we can sit down and actually do webcasts, which I'm really excited about.
Right.
The podcast I'm excited about, but the webcast, because we're face-to-face with the audience, and I think that's going to be really, really cool. But to me, the Electric Circus kind of culminates what I've started, and add this whole new element again. Having other people to bounce off of. And that's what I had asked you earlier, what you think we're going to offer, what we're going to bring to the table. And I think you hit the nail right on the head. I think our thing, as most guys have when they have podcasts and they work with other people, is that we come from two different generations, and we can meet in the middle and appreciate each other's stuff, or hate it, either way.
Right.
But it's a forum in which we can discuss everything and really come up with what's better, what's worse, what it was like when I was young compared to what it was like when you were young, and then of course we meet in the middle because we both work at Disney Quest, which is really a cool place.
All right. Let's get to another question. Let's get to a different question, actually.
Okay.
So now that we know about you and you know about me,
right.
Let's get to now.
Okay.
So 2013, games that you played.
Games I played this year. Let's see. Well, the one I got for Christmas this year, because again, I don't get a whole lot because I'm into the older stuff, but I love one of the games that came out last year, which was Luigi's Mansion.
Excellent game. Excellent.
I love it. And the funny thing is, I was a huge fan of the original. I love. It was the reason I bought a GameCube.
Like you know what? I still have not played it.
I'm telling you, I highly recommend it, and I'll let you borrow it one day because I know you have a GameCube, and I think you would really get a kick out of it. It takes that original idea and basically expands upon it infinitely because there's multiple mansions, and then you have the scare tower that you can do things with other people.
You can do online.
But what amazed me, I think, the most was the graphics. I didn't expect it to be as vibrant as it is on the 3DS because playing it on the GameCube, it's such a large picture and you get to see everything. And I was so worried that being a small screen I wouldn't see it all, but boy, I loved it, and I've been playing it, and it's just driving me nuts because there's some really hard spots in it, and it's really
Have you turned on the 3D yet?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And the 3D looks amazing.
Yeah.
I think Luigi's Mansion Dark Moon is probably the best 3D that the 3DS has to offer. I'm not a big fan of the 3D because a lot of the games kind of get. But I have to say, this game probably I actually was playing it with the 3D on more often than I played any other game, even Pokemon.
Well, I think Luigi's Mansion was made for 3D.
Right.
Because when you think about it, you're walking down these hallways. It really it lends itself very nicely to the 3D effect.
And it looks like it's not like popping out.
Yeah.
No.
Like, it's that depth.
Right. It looks like you're looking at
You're looking through a window. The diorama.
Like a diorama.
Yeah,
you're looking at a diorama.
That's what I like about it. Well, see, and that's the thing. You go back to the original Luigi's Mansion, and it was a forerunner in technology because originally it was a demo to demonstrate the new light graphics engine that they were using on the GameCube. It was allowing them to see like Luigi's flashlight and how the beam looked so real and the light bouncing off Luigi and all that. And it originally just intended to be a demo, and then all of a sudden they actually built a game out of it. And so I think the Luigi's Mansion series was that kind of forerunner in technology to begin with. So it was just only logical that they put it over to the 3DS.
And that was a surprise, too.
It was surprising to me because I really didn't think it was... I'm like, when I heard it was going to be on 3DS, I was kind of disappointed because I'm thinking, this is perfect for the Wii.
Right.
You take that Wii remote, hold it like the vacuum cleaner, and it's a win-win. Why are they putting it over on the 3DS, a little tiny screen? And then I played it. And I'm like, oh my god, this is the coolest thing ever.
I think this year, definitely the 3DS has gotten a lot of love. Even the Wii U has gotten a lot of love. And I think it's because Nintendo really doesn't have any third parties.
No, and this is the first. Well, this past year they had some, and they were pretty good. But this year coming up, they have a lot of their own titles coming out that are going to be really, really big. You got Link, you got Zelda, and what they're doing with that, and then all the other titles that are coming out. I think this is going to be a big year for Nintendo, and I think that's why so many people bought it Christmas. Not only that, but the titles that have come out so far have been so impressive.
Right.
On the 3DS, the Wii U.
I know you haven't played it yet, but I'll go ahead and set out Legend of Zelda: Link Between Two Worlds.
Yeah.
Very well done. My only gripe is and some people actually like it, but I don't know. I don't like the renting system. You have you get all the weapons at the beginning of the game.
Yeah.
You just rent them out. If you die, then you have to rent it again.
Yeah.
I didn't like it as much because I kind of like going into a dungeon and even sometimes being surprised at what weapon I get. But at the same time, it's actually kind of neat in another way because now I get to choose how I play the game.
Right, and I think that's the whole evolution again coming up. Nintendo has been way in the background when it comes to DLC and online gaming and everything else. Even on the Wii, it wasn't really prominent. I mean, you had a few games like Mario Kart and things like that allowed you to play with other players. But that was it. This is their first dance in that foray. Right. It's kind of like, okay, what can we do with it? How can we be a part of that experience without tampering with our formula?
Right.
But at the same time, like with the Zelda, they had to tamper because they had to make it where you could pick up where you're left off, but you're going to have to acquire that stuff again in a different way.
Right, and it was a decent game. Let's see, what other games have you played this year?
Well, let's see. The other one I got for Christmas, and again, as you guys are going to find out, I'm a big compilation guy. Like when the PlayStation came out and they did the Namco Classics discs, I bought all those. I got Midway Origins, and it's like all the other ones they had done, all the compilation discs where you got all the Williams games, your Defender, your Stargate, your SimStar, your Joust, all that. This one came with a whopping 40 games, I think, which is amazing because I remember back in the day you would put 5 or 6, that was huge. Right. Now it's like a huge, and we're talking some major titles like Smash TV, Total Carnage, and all those, all in one CD. So what got me were two things about it. A, it's in high def because of course you can plug it into your widescreen television through the HDMI port, so the games look spectacular. And I will tell you this: there's nothing like playing Robotron on a 50-inch screen. I was like, this is my church. Here it is. Bow down to the master. This is so awesome, and all those colors. 50 inches. I could turn the lights off. I mean, it was hypnotic. But the one thing that I got out of this that I really never did before was the online leaderboards and things like that, which is the other reason why I got it. So you can basically play online and compete with other people.
And that's for the 360?
For the 360, and I think it's on PlayStation 3 as well. You might want to check.
Okay.
But that to me was what I played so far. And again, because I don't play a lot of new stuff, and I will eventually start getting to some of the newer stuff, especially as I get my Wii U eventually, and I have the 3DS, so as titles come out, I'll start playing. Let me see, was there anything else I played? Downloaded content, there was a couple of things I played. There was one I played that I really liked, and that was called Arcade Craft. You guess where this is going.
Yeah.
You get to build an arcade from scratch. It is 1980, and you're given, I think, $15,000 in a building, and basically you lay out your games that you buy, and as the months go on, you have to pay your bills, of course, and repair games, and
so basically you have
buy
to
more games.
Life.
Right. It's basically life in an arcade, and to me it was like so cool. I'm like up to 1982 now. And I have to keep, like, every year it gives me, like, it gives me quarterly reports, and I have to keep buying games in order to
I wonder if it has the video game crash.
I don't know. I haven't gotten to that point yet, but
what year was that? What year
well,
was about,
technically, the game crash really started in '83.
Okay.
It was really, we'll go over really quickly for you kids that weren't there. We had what's called the Golden Age of Gaming. That was from about 1980 through about 82. And that was when we had, you would walk in an arcade and literally there would be a new game every year.
Right.
It was the most amazing thing ever. You would walk in, and sometimes it was more than that. Well, what happened was by 1982, there were so many games, and some of them really crummy games at that, and people were spending thousands of dollars on these games for their locations. They were losing money, and decided that they weren't going to buy anymore. Mm-hmm. So by 1983, we started hitting a slump. But most of us players had no idea. We were still playing. We had no clue.
Right.
It wasn't until 1984 that the arcade players and the home players started noticing, oh yeah. And then the big event was in August of 1984 when Atari closed the store. And that's when Jackson Mel bought it out and started Atari games and split the home from the arcade and became a different world altogether. But that was really what the game crash was all about. Right. It was just it was an oversaturation, and of course when that's happened many times since then. But everybody keeps bringing up the game crash. Like,
well, I was thinking it would be interesting if they put it in the Depression.
Oh yeah, absolutely. As far as the game's concerned, I wouldn't be surprised if they didn't.
Right.
I think that I think it would be really sad if they didn't put it in there because it was a piece of our history, and we dealt with it. In fact, a lot of the games I'll be reviewing come from that year, and it's amazing because there was so many great titles that either came out in the arcade or at home that got virtually overlooked because either A, nobody bought them, or B, nobody played them. And it's pretty sad.
All right.
So, but those are the games I've been playing so far, and sorry that they're not like new, but that's what I thought.
It's all right. Well, as for me, I guess since I'm the younger one.
Yep.
Pokemon X and Y.
Of course.
Very done well. Done very well. I really enjoyed that game.
Yeah.
The only thing I didn't like about it is I think they were trying to get new players as well as old.
Right. Yeah.
So they dumbed down a lot of things. Now, some of them I was grateful that they dumbed down because really, some of these things are just too complicated unless you were like really into the game.
Right.
Unless you knew how everything worked.
Right.
You didn't get much fun out of it, or stuff like that. I do like that it is a little bit easier for people to play. I do like that people can pick it up. Yeah. I do like that it's finally in 3D. Yeah. Because this is something that we've been dreaming of since I played Pokemon Red back in 98. Except for Pokemon XD Gale of Darkness, which is one of my favorite GameCube games. That game was an amazing game. That and Coliseum, which came before it, was an amazing game. It was the first Pokemon 3D game. We'll talk about that a little bit. I'm sure we'll have like a Pokemon episode.
Absolutely.
Pokemon X and Y. Branching from Nintendo, because I am a big Nintendo fan, but I do have other systems. BioShock Infinite, which we talked about earlier. Amazing game. The story blew my mind. Now, I'm not a big horror game player. I don't play a lot of horror games.
Yeah.
But this game, the story was so done so well, the first BioShock game, that I had to play it.
Right.
And then I skipped Bioshock 2 because I wasn't so into the story. It wasn't done by the same studio. I guess I should play it. Maybe there's people shouting at the podcast right now going, "You should play this game!" I only played the first couple minutes and the story didn't grab me, so I just I kind of went out. But Bioshock Infinite is an amazing game. And it's funny because the game actually reminds me a lot about Disney.
Right.
We both work at Disney.
Yep.
We know how it works, and just the way that it was set up.
Yeah.
Even the first Bioshock game, it was very Disney, if that makes sense. Even though it's a horror game, you know, well, I guess not horror, maybe more suspense, but still, even though it was like that, it still, and it really lended to the realistic view of the game.
Right.
Let's see, Ratchet and Clank.
Yeah.
I love the Ratchet and Clank feature games for the trilogy for PS3, and I got to play Into the Nexus, which is the newest game.
Yeah.
Which such a good game, but so short. Like, it literally took me maybe 3-4 hours to play it.
Yeah.
It really was not long. And I wish it was longer. I really do. I really wish this game was longer. Because the weapons in it are so neat. And, I know one of the things in Ratchet and Clank games, I don't know if people have played them before, but in the Ratchet and Clank games, there's always like a side game for Clank. He always does something. In the future games, you had kind of like a squad-based game where you had like these little guys follow you around and you just kind of like gave them orders and they did things.
Right.
But in Into the Nexus, what they did was kind of like a side-scrolling game. But you controlled the gravity.
Right.
So you actually were able to turn the entire level and change gravity entirely. So you had to actually get through the level, and then you wake up this little monster thing, and you'd have to make it chase you back to the beginning of the level, which was really interesting. And the way they did it was really neat too, where they put it all in silhouette.
Right.
Except for like, you know, lava pits and stuff like that. It was all in silhouette. So it was done really nice. So I did like that game. Let's see. I have Wind Waker HD, which I was excited about. We talked about it earlier, DuckTales Remastered.
Yep.
Great job with DuckTales Remastered. I geeked out when I heard that they got the original voice actors.
Yeah.
The ones that are still alive.
Yeah.
To do it. And to hear those voices again was just amazing.
Yeah.
And let's see, other games. Oh, Super Mario 3D World. How could I forget that?
That's the one reason right now I want a Wii U.
And you know what? It's really weird too because the week that came out, I got my Game Informer, and it has been a long time. The Game Informer always picks up one game and says, "This is our game of the month.
Yep.
This is the game that we like." I think it's been a long, long time Nintendo has had a game of the month.
Of course.
And I saw Mario on there, and I'm like, yes, finally, you know. And me and a couple of friends had a 48-hour gaming marathon.
Yeah, I know. I was working. I couldn't be there.
And which turned to a 72-hour gaming marathon.
Meanwhile, we're saying, please watch your step. Keep your hands on feet and legs inside your vehicle.
And we played that game crazily. Like, and the cool thing was, it's a 4-player co-op game.
Yeah, yeah.
And, you know, you were talking about it earlier, and I think this is Nintendo's stance on it too. I can't speak to the company at one point, but I really think they want to try to make more games where you sit on the couch and you play the game with your friend, as opposed to doing a lot of multiplayer online. Because I read an interview in the new Game Informer that just came out recently, where they said, listen, we think that online multiplayer is great, but we wanted people to sit down with each other and play the game together.
Right.
You know, on a couch, play with your boyfriend, your girlfriend, your friends, your family members, your cousins, your, you know, smelly Uncle Earl, who, you know, you have to sit on the other side of the room and play, you know, because he smells. That's why he's called Smelly Uncle Earl. But all joking aside, it's a great game. It's very challenging. It's long. which is another good thing about the game. It is a long, long game. You have 8 worlds as usual, but then there's like, probably about 4 or 5 other worlds afterwards.
Right.
And they're each more challenging. They get more and more challenging as you go.
Right.
So it gets harder and harder and harder and harder and harder. You know, and being able to play the different characters and having each of them having a special ability.
Right.
I know that playing by myself, I would even get to a point where I would just have the game pick for me which character I would play.
Right.
And have it randomly pick whoever. And, you know, this was a great idea. I mean, really, the game is every Mario game you've ever played put into a blender, you know, and took all the good games.
Frappe.
Yeah, get on Frappe and then put it right in front of you. You know, you have all these great games together, and it's really interesting. I'm hoping Nintendo will maybe make a sequel this year and stuff like that.
I hope so too. I mean, I haven't played it yet, but I've seen a lot of it, and blown away by, because I have the Super Mario 3D Land that came out for the 3DS, and I love that. But this takes it and moves it so far forward, and I love the cat costume. You know.
Oh, we can't call it costume because Kia gets mad for it. It's transformation.
Ooh, okay. Becoming a cat play. Keep your mice inside.
It's a really cool transformation too. It's like one of the best in the game too, which is funny because they have the raccoon suit in it, and I actually prefer the cat suit over it, which is weird because I was a huge fan of it, the raccoon suit. Although I will have to admit, you can't fly with the raccoon suit in the game.
See, that's
so you can only hover.
Yeah.
You can hover, but you can't fly, and
I
miss the flying.
Yeah.
So, you know, I mean, those are a lot of the games I played this year. I'm still playing Pokemon right now. I'm very sad that Pokemon Bank's been pushed back.
Yeah.
What's
going on with that? They had problems with the service?
Well, here's the thing. At first, we were told that a lot of people had bought Pokemon Bank.
Right.
And it crashed the server. But later on, Nintendo came out and said, listen, we had tons of people buy our game system. And you have to remember that now they've tied all the game systems together.
Yeah.
So you can go on the Miiverse on your 3DS as well as your Wii U, and you have to kind of set it up now so that way you can actually go on either or. So if you get points on your DS, if you buy like one of those gift cards, you put it on the 3DS, you can now transfer that money over to the Wii U and also buy stuff on the Wii U shopping market.
Okay.
And what happened was, according to what Nintendo said, there was just so many people logging on and getting, you know, their profile, and their server just couldn't handle it.
It's amazing too, because you would think, well, me anyway, outside looking in, I would think Nintendo would have kind of, I don't know, thought that this might happen because this is their first time into this realm.
Right.
And you would think, okay, well, we're taking our time into this, let's make sure we do this right, and then all of a sudden, wham! The whole thing goes down, they've now suspended it.
Well, they're not the only ones, though, because Sony had a problem with their PlayStation 4, with their online system, and Xbox One also.
Well,
so they're not the only ones.
But, you know, and that brings up a valid point, too, is that here's the next evolution of gaming system that's really going to be going. Here's the thing, folks. I'm saying, this is my prediction, is GameStop's going to go the way of the dinosaur. Because, really, things are going to become DLC. Things will become online entertainment. It's going to be, you know, we always felt that way in the beginning as well, that there was going to come a time where gaming is going to become a la carte. Well, meaning, basically, you turn your system on, there'll be a menu, you pick what you want to play it, and then you choose something else. And that's really where it's going. It's evolving past that a la carte mode, though, and becoming something where you have a hard drive, store your games on it, and I know people want hard copies right now, and we're seeing that, like with the addition of Super Mario Brothers U and DuckTales Remastered. You know, they would give you the hard copy after you bought the DLC, or now it's just in the store.
Right.
But I think that is just to kind of satisfy people's needs to have that hard copy.
Right.
Because I think this is going to be something that
I'm one of them.
Well, see, I am too, because I come from a time where, back in the day we had cartridges.
Well,
and then
also,
when we went CD, I had a hard time with that.
Well, also the bad thing about DLC is that you can't necessarily bring it over to a friend's house and play it.
No, and the other thing
have
is,
to bring your entire system.
what if your system crashes?
Yeah.
Is there an actual record of all that stuff?
Sony and I believe Microsoft now have a cloud system.
Okay.
So you buy the game, it goes on the cloud, and then you can download it again. If I believe that's correct.
Yeah.
Not 100% kids, but I believe that's correct.
Yeah.
So it's probably going to go to the cloud system. I think Nintendo is also checking this out with Pokemon Bank.
Yeah.
To see if they can do it.
Yeah.
Because Pokemon Bank is a cloud system.
Yeah.
So I think that's what even Nintendo is trying out. And I think that's
the
I think
evolution.
you're right.
That's the evolution.
It's
I'm telling you. I remember back in the day. This is way back.
Thursday.
Yeah, no. It was probably a Thursday. I remember way back when they had things like Game Line. Intellivision tried something where it went through your cable system as well, where basically you would go to a particular channel, turn on your Intellivision, and there would be a menu of games that are up there permanently. They would change them out from month to month, but basically it was a la carte. You would pay for the service every month, and then basically play to your heart's content. Whatever was up there was yours. It's evolved, of course, but it's the same idea.
Right.
I think the industry always saw it coming, but a lot of the companies were fighting against it for the longest time until technology caught up, i.e. the cloud and all these other things that have happened in the last year and a half, 2 years. But still, now it comes to the consumer. It comes to the consumer saying, we embrace this or we deny it. And that's going to be the big judgment call on this whole thing. Now, I'm on the fence, but I'm kind of pushing towards the DLC, and I'll tell you why. It's funny, for years I always loved going into EB and then GameStop and looking at the newest games and saying, I want this, I want that. But I have really enjoyed going on to my 3DS, subsequently my 360, and going on their stores and seeing what's there. And it's instant. I don't have to get my car, I don't have to drive home, I don't have to, it's there, it's ready to play. There's a certain satisfaction to that I couldn't get when I had that hard copy. Do I miss the hard copies? Yes and no. The hard copies I miss because they were mine and they're a piece of me. But at the same time, they're baggage. I now have to have a place to put them and store them and all that. Then I don't play it anymore.
And then when you get a new game system, you won't be able to play it if you don't keep it.
I'm running 18 systems at home on my on one television.
Right.
I've got 4 switchers that are going. It's insane.
Right.
And the amount of room that I need just for the software alone to operate those. I've got 3 file cabinets full of games. That's the advantage to all of this cloud service. And I think once the technology is there, hey, listen, we buy online and do. Is it safe? Is it safe? Probably not so much, but it seems to work, and every day there are improvements on the system. And I wasn't a big fan of that in the beginning, but I do it all the time now. So as I got my 360, I actually started using it, because I was late to the 360 game as well. I bought mine 2 years ago. I got it for Christmas. And I literally bought nothing for it. And then I started going onto their online service and looking at the games they had, and I'm like, there's some really cool stuff on here. And I started downloading it. I'm like, this is really neat. And you can get the demo, and then you can buy it. And I'm like, this is really cool, because now I can get it for free. I can try it 1 or 2 rounds. Say, this is really cool. I like this game. I'll spend the money.
All right.
Instead of going, looking at the box going, I'm not sure. Not sure. I'll try this one, and then you go home, you hate it, you're taking it back, now you get the car,
then it takes 2-3 hours to beat it, and you're just like, well, that was a waste of money.
Yeah, and they're saving money because now they're not having to press discs or build cartridges or anything else. So it's really, you're buying the software and it's going onto your system and you're playing it. I kind of like it. It's grown on me like a soft, comfortable blanket that I'm putting around me. And I have to say, I actually do enjoy it. and this is coming from the old perspective. I'm the guy who used to go to, EB, KB Toys, Toys R Us.
Did you go to
Funko Land?
Funko Land.
Oh my gosh, yeah. Oh yeah.
Oh, Babbage's.
I went to Babbage's, yeah, before they merged VB and became GameStop, yes. I remember when Babbage's was going out of business and there was just games galore, and they were selling stuff at 75% off.
Play and Trade.
Oh my, Play and Trade I still go to.
Oh,
there's one up in Lake Mary, and I go up to them quite often because they do carry literally everything. I can walk in, they have Atari cards just sitting in a rack, and I can buy them. I'm kind of embracing this whole DLC thing as long as A, it's safe, and B, I know that my stuff will be there when I turn my system on.
Right.
I have no problem with it.
I mean, looking to the future, having a cloud system, now we don't have to worry about backwards compatibility necessarily.
Not only that, but no hard drive space is required. So now you can buy the bare bones system. You don't have to buy the deluxe packages. Now I've got the cloud. Well, I need the unless that hard drive is required for the operating system itself, and I don't have to worry about it.
Well, we'll see how it goes out. And I think 2014 is going to be interesting. As for games this year, are we looking forward to any games this year?
Me, it's hit and miss. Like I said, compilation stuff. Nothing's really hit me yet. Again, I'm looking to buy the Wii U for the Super Mario 3D World, and I'm looking forward to seeing what comes out from Nintendo. I'm not going to be buying any of the new systems. I'm going to keep with the 360 for a while because to me it is a new system. I haven't had it really that long, so for me it's kind of like, okay, now I'm going to get my feet wet now that the prices of the games are coming down. I can actually buy all that used stuff, and I've always been that way. I always bought these older systems and crazy ones. But now, what about you?
What about me?
Yeah.
Well, I have to say this year is definitely Smash Brothers.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Mega Man's in it. Sonic's in it. They just confirmed BD.
Yes, I saw that. Is the girl from Wii U in it? Or Wii U Fit?
Oh yeah, the Fit, and there will be a guy trainer too.
Yeah.
You'll be able to
kick your butt.
Mario Kart 8 looks really good. Really excited about that. And since playing Sonic All-Star Racing Transforms on the Wii U, which was an exceptional game, and I've kept it since Wreck-It Ralph.
Absolutely.
I really hope that Wreck-It Ralph appears in Smash Brothers, although I doubt it very highly.
That would be amazing. Could you imagine a matchup between him and Donkey Kong?
That would be interesting. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see. I think that's pretty much all the games so far this year I've heard that are coming out. I don't think there's anything for the PlayStation 3 yet. I'm very excited to see what they come out with for this year's E3.
Yeah.
So it's going to be a hard sell. They have to sell the game.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, for my opinion, Sony and Microsoft really don't have any good launch titles.
So that's the problem I have with both systems is I felt like they rushed them. They really rushed the production run this year because they wanted them out, and now it's like, oops, we don't have anything.
Yeah.
And I kind of, that's why I feel the way I do, and that's why I'm not investing in either.
Right, and me neither. I know that I probably will get a PlayStation 4 eventually, only because Kingdom Hearts 3 is on it.
Yeah.
I definitely am excited about seeing a Kingdom Hearts 2.5 HD remix, which I have 1.5 HD remix. Very excited about that.
Hey, to see Tron in HD will be very cool.
And you know what? It's actually kind of funny. My love of Tron came from Kingdom Hearts.
Yes, absolutely.
So, very excited about that. So, I think it's about time to wrap it up. What do you say, my friend?
I would think it is time to wrap it up. So, from Game Central here at Uber Nerd's apartment until we get our new facilities, it's Uber Nerd. Good night there, Uber Nerd.
Good night there, Uber Nerd.
All right. This is Raygunn. We're going to close this Electric Circus off, episode 1. I hope you enjoy it. Keep playing like it's 1981, everybody. I'll talk to you later.
Hey, Arcaders. This is Uber Nerd 527. Did you like our podcast? Would you like to read some of the articles that we talked about? Well, go over to arcadearchives.wordpress.com to check out all the different articles on our blog. Plus, go to Facebook, look up Arcade Archive to like our Facebook page.
and probably even get a hold of us. See you next time on the Electric Circus.